The air bit with the crisp, clean scent of pine and something wilder, something untamed that clung to the damp earth. It was late afternoon when Kael finally turned the vehicle off the main road onto a winding gravel track that disappeared into a thicket of ancient conifers. The light, already fading, filtered through the dense canopy in ethereal shafts, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. Elara had been watching the scenery unfold, her cheek pressed against the cool glass of the window, a quiet hum of anticipation vibrating deep within her. She had known Kael for years, their lives intersecting in ways that were always too brief, always too public. But this weekend, this was different. This was just them, tucked away in a place he described as utterly removed, a place where the world outside would cease to exist. A shiver, not entirely from the cold, traced its way down her spine. The track finally opened into a clearing, revealing a structure that took her breath away. It wasn't a cabin, not truly. It was a lodge, built of dark, weathered stone and warm, honey-toned timber, its broad eaves sheltering a wrap-around veranda. Smoke curled lazily from a stone chimney, a welcoming beacon against the deepening twilight. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a sweeping vista of a valley, already mist-shrouded and ethereal. Kael brought the SUV to a gentle stop before the massive hand-carved oak door. The engine died, plunging them into a profound silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. He turned to her then, his profile etched against the fading light, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Welcome, Elara," he said, his voice a low thrum that always seemed to resonate directly in her chest. "To Whis." She murmured the name, feeling it on her tongue, a soft exhalation of sound. Whissen. It felt right. Secretive. Intimate. Kael was out of the car before she could fully process her thoughts, moving with that effortless grace that was so uniquely his. He opened her door, offering a hand. His fingers, long and strong, closed around hers, and a jolt, familiar yet always new, shot through her. His skin was warm, a stark contrast to the chill in the air. He didn't release her hand immediately, instead drawing her gently to stand beside him, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin on her wrist. His gaze, dark and intense, lingered on her face, searching, assessing, and she felt herself blush under its weight. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," she managed, her voice a little breathy. He chuckled, a rich, deep sound. "I hoped you'd think so. Come, let's get you inside, there's a fire waiting." He led her up the 3 broad stone steps to the veranda, the scent of burning wood growing stronger, sweeter. The heavy oak door swung open silently as he pushed it, revealing an interior that was both rustic and luxurious. A vast living space unfolded before them, dominated by a towering stone fireplace where a magnificent fire crackled and danced, casting a warm, flickering glow across the room. Plush leather sofas invited repose, and a massive bearskin rug lay before the hearth. Bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes lined one wall, and a grand piano stood in a shadowed corner, promising melodies yet unheard. But it was the windows that truly captivated her. The entire far wall was glass, offering an uninterrupted panorama of the darkening valley, now a tapestry of deepening blues and purples, as the last vestiges of daylight surrendered to the encroaching night. A sliver of moon, sharp and new, was already visible in the sky. Kael released her hand only to take her small carry-on bag. "Make yourself comfortable, I'll bring in the rest." She watched him go, his broad shoulders disappearing back into the dimness of the porch. Her fingers still tingled from his touch. She walked further into the room, drawn by the fire's embrace. The heat was a balm against the cool air she'd carried in, and she extended her hands towards the flames, soaking in their warmth. The lodge felt ancient, imbued with history, yet impeccably cared for. It felt like a sanctuary. When Kael returned, laden with their bags, he found her mesmerized by the view. He set the luggage down with a soft thud and came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the radiating warmth of his body, smell the subtle earthy scent of his cologne, mingling with the crisp mountain air that still clung to his clothes. "It's something, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper, as if not to disturb the reverence of the moment. "It's everything," she replied, her gaze still fixed on the distant peaks. "Thank you, Kael, for bringing me here." He didn't respond with words, but she felt his gaze on her, a soft weight that made her skin prickle. Then, his hand was on her back, a gentle, reassuring pressure that moved slowly, deliberately tracing the curve of her spine through the thick wool of her sweater. It wasn't overtly sexual, yet it was undeniably intimate, a silent claim. "Your room is through there," he said, his voice a little rougher now, indicating a doorway to the left of the fireplace. "Mine is opposite. Take your time settling in, I'll start on dinner." He left her then, retreating towards what she presumed was the kitchen. She took a deep breath, the scent of pine and wood smoke filling her lungs. Her heart hammered a soft rhythm against her ribs. Her room was a continuation of the lodge's rustic elegance. A massive four-poster bed, draped in thick, cream-colored linen, dominated the space. A smaller fireplace stood ready for lighting, and another wall of windows offered a private view of a cluster of towering firs, their branches laden with a dusting of early snow. A heavy, embroidered throw lay across a chaise lounge, inviting her to curl up with a book. The bathroom, through an archway, was a marvel of polished stone and copper, featuring a deep clawfoot tub. She unpacked slowly, deliberately, hanging her clothes in a cedar-lined wardrobe, placing her toiletries on the polished vanity. She chose a soft cashmere sweater in a deep emerald green and dark jeans for the evening, wanting to feel comfortable yet still elegant. She ran a brush through her hair, letting it fall in soft waves around her shoulders. She barely applied any makeup, wanting to feel as natural as possible, as if shedding the layers of her city life with each deliberate movement. When she emerged, the lodge was filled with the tantalizing aroma of garlic and herbs. Kael stood by a large, reclaimed wood island in the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, his back to her. He was humming softly, a low, melodic tune she didn't recognize, but found herself drawn to. The fire in the main room now cast longer, dancing shadows, and the soft glow of lamps had joined its light. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him for a moment, appreciating the quiet domesticity of the scene. He moved with an easy competence, chopping vegetables, stirring a pot on the large gas range. His presence filled the space, a comforting, solid anchor. He must have sensed her there, for he paused, turning his head slightly. His eyes, when they met hers, held a familiar warmth, a spark of something she couldn't quite name but recognized as uniquely Ithim. "There you are," he said, his smile widening. "Dinner's almost ready. I hope you like wild mushroom risotto." "It sounds incredible," she replied, pushing off the frame and walking towards him. "Can I help?" "You can pour the wine," he suggested, gesturing to a bottle of rich red and 2 crystal glasses already set on the counter. "It's a Barolo. I thought it would suit the evening." She uncorked the bottle, the soft Inchapaye echoing gently in the quiet room. As she poured, the rich, earthy scent of the wine mingled with the savory aromas from the stove. Kael continued to stir the risotto, adding a final swirl of cream, his movements economical and precise. He looked up again, catching her eye, a silent question passing between them. "It's perfect," she said, handing him his glass. Their fingers brushed, and the contact, fleeting as it was, sent a jolt through her. She wondered if he felt it too, or if her own senses were simply hyper-attuned to him tonight. They ate at a small, intimate table set near the window, the valley now completely swallowed by night, save for the scattered pinpricks of distant stars and the soft glow of the moon. The risotto was divine, rich and creamy, bursting with flavor. Kael was a surprisingly good cook, a talent she had only recently discovered. Their conversation was easy, flowing from light-hearted anecdotes to deeper reflections, punctuated by comfortable silences. They talked about their work, their aspirations, the simple joy of being in such a beautiful, secluded place. Each word felt significant, each shared glance a silent confirmation of the connection that hummed between them. After dinner, Kael insisted she relax while he cleared the table. "Part of the charm of Whis," he said with a wink, "is that you don't lift a finger." She allowed herself to be led back to the living room, settling onto one of the deep leather sofas before the fire. The flames had mellowed, casting a softer, more intimate glow. She watched the dance of light and shadow, the quiet crackle of the burning wood, a soothing rhythm. Kael returned shortly, 2 snifters of amber liquid in his hands. "A little something to warm us further," he said, handing her one. The scent of aged whiskey, sweet and smoky, rose to meet her. She took a sip, the liquid spreading a warmth through her chest that had nothing to do with the alcohol and everything to do with his proximity. He settled onto the sofa opposite her, but not directly. He angled his body slightly towards her, his long legs stretched out, one arm resting along the back of the sofa, his hand close to her shoulder. The silence that descended then was different from before. It was heavier, charged with unspoken desires. The air between them thrummed with an almost palpable energy. Elara found her gaze drawn to his hands, resting so casually, yet so powerfully near her. She remembered the feel of them, strong and calloused, yet capable of such tenderness. "Are you comfortable, Elara?" he asked, his voice soft, deeper than before. "More than comfortable," she confessed, meeting his gaze. His eyes were like dark pools, reflecting the firelight, holding a depth she could easily lose herself in. "I feel at peace here. And yet," she trailed off, unsure how to articulate the other feeling, the stirring of something wild and potent, a yearning that had been quietly building between them for months, now amplified by the intimacy of their surroundings. He leaned forward slightly, his elbow resting on his knee, the snifter held loosely in his hand. "And yet?" he prompted, his voice a gentle invitation. She took another sip of the whiskey, letting the warmth spread. "And yet," she began again, her voice a little steadier, "I also feel a sense of anticipation, like something wonderful is about to happen." A slow smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. "Is that so?" he murmured, his gaze never leaving hers. "Perhaps it is. Perhaps it always has been with us." He rose then, moving with that fluid grace that always mesmerized her. He didn't come towards her directly, but walked to the window, gazing out at the star-dusted night. "The moon is almost full," he observed, his voice now distant, thoughtful. "And the air is still. It's a perfect night for anything." He turned back, his silhouette framed against the dark glass, the firelight catching the planes of his face, making him look almost ethereal, yet undeniably real, undeniably present. He walked back towards the sofa, but instead of sitting opposite her, he stopped before her, looking down. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, and she knew he wasn't asking to sit. He was asking for more, for permission to cross an invisible boundary, to deepen the intimacy. Her breath hitched. She simply nodded, her throat suddenly dry. He sat beside her then, closer than before, the cushion dipping with his weight. The scent of him, wood smoke, whiskey, and that uniquely Kael scent, enveloped her, intoxicating and grounding all at once. He set his snifter on the small table beside them, then slowly, deliberately, reached out. His hand, warm and firm, settled on her knee. Through the denim of her jeans, she felt the heat of his palm, the slight pressure of his fingers. It was a simple touch, yet it sent a tremor through her entire being. Her skin tingled, alive. She watched his hand, the strong lines of his fingers, the subtle pulse beating at his wrist. He didn't move it, didn't caress. He simply rested it there, a quiet, powerful statement. His gaze was still locked with hers, intense and searching, as if asking her if this was okay, if this was what she truly wanted. Her own hand, almost unconsciously, lifted from her lap. She hesitated for a moment, then with a slow, deliberate movement, placed her fingers over his, intertwining them gently. Her skin, cool against his warmth, felt the slight roughness of his calluses, the smooth strength beneath. A soft sigh escaped him, a sound of deep contentment, and his thumb began to stroke the back of her hand, a slow, mesmerizing rhythm. The warmth of the fire, the mellowness of the whiskey, the electric current passing between their joined hands, it all coalesced into a potent sensation, a delicious languor that seeped into her bones. "Elara," he murmured, his voice now a mere whisper, "you have no idea how long I've wanted to do this." Her heart fluttered. She felt a blush creep up her neck, warming her cheeks. "And you, Kael," she whispered back, her voice barely audible. He turned his hand, gently enclosing hers within both of his, lifting them slightly. His thumbs began to trace the delicate bones of her knuckles, the soft skin of her palm. Each touch was feather-light, yet incredibly powerful, sending shivers through her. "Your hands," he mused, his voice a low murmur, "they're so expressive. I've watched them for years, sketching, painting, gesturing. I've always wondered what it would feel like to hold them like this." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The warmth of his mouth, the soft brush of his beard against her skin, sent a jolt straight to her core. Her breath hitched again, and she felt a delicious weakness spread through her limbs. He looked up at her through his lashes, his eyes dark and smoldering. "And now I know," he added, his voice thick with emotion. "They feel exactly as I imagined. Soft, yielding, yet strong." He released her hand, but only to cup her cheek, his thumb gently stroking the curve of her jaw. His touch was exquisite, careful, as if she were made of fragile glass. Her eyes drifted closed for a moment, savoring the sensation, the sheer, unadulterated pleasure of his touch. She leaned into it, implicitly inviting him closer. When her eyes opened again, his face was closer, his gaze locked onto hers, filled with a raw intensity that took her breath away. She could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, the subtle shift of emotion playing across his features. "Elara," he said again, his voice barely a whisper now. "Tell me if I'm moving too fast. Tell me if this isn't what you want." The question, so full of respect and concern, only deepened her desire. She reached up, her fingers threading into the soft hair at his nape, pulling him gently closer. "No," she breathed, her voice a fervent plea. "No, Kael, this is exactly what I want. This is everything I've wanted." His eyes darkened further, a silent understanding passing between them. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she didn't. Her fingers tightened in his hair, urging him on. His lips, warm and soft, met hers. It was a tentative kiss at first, a gentle press, a question. But then, as she responded, her mouth softening beneath his, it deepened. His lips moved with a slow, sensual rhythm, tasting, exploring. Her own lips parted slightly, inviting him further, and he accepted the invitation with a soft groan, his tongue lightly brushing hers. A spark ignited, then flared into a roaring flame. The world outside the lodge, the crackle of the fire, the distant sounds of the night, it all faded into a soft hum, a backdrop to the symphony of sensations erupting between them. His hand left her cheek, sliding down to cup the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, pulling her closer still, deepening the kiss. She tasted whiskey and warmth and Kael, a heady mix that sent her senses reeling. Her hands, freed from his hair, found their way to his shoulders, gripping the solid muscle beneath his shirt. She arched into him, pressing her body against his, feeling the hard plane of his chest against her softer curves. The kiss grew more urgent, more demanding, yet still imbued with an exquisite tenderness. He kissed her as if he had been starving for this, as if he had waited a lifetime. And in a way she supposed they both had. All those years of polite distance, of unspoken longing, were now dissolving in the heat of this moment, in the intoxicating intimacy of Whis. He finally broke the kiss, pulling back just enough for their foreheads to touch, their breaths mingling in the fire-warmed air. His eyes, still dark and smoldering, searched hers, raw with emotion. "Elara," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "you are magnificent." She couldn't speak, could only gaze back at him, her own eyes mirroring the intensity she saw in his. Her lips still throbbed from his kiss, her body humming with a delicious ache. He kissed her again. This time a softer, more possessive kiss, a promise of more to come. His hand, which had been at the nape of her neck, now slid lower, over her shoulder, down her arm, his fingers tracing a path of fire along her skin. His thumb brushed the swell of her breast, a light teasing touch that made her gasp softly. "May I stay with you tonight?" he asked, his voice a low rumble against her lips, his breath warm and intoxicating. "I don't want to leave you." The question was not just about sharing a bed, but about sharing themselves, about discarding the last vestiges of polite separation. It was an invitation to an intimacy she had yearned for, dreamt of. "Yes," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, Kael. Stay." A wave of relief and triumph washed over his face, softening the intensity in his eyes, replacing it with a tender devotion. He deepened the kiss once more, a silent affirmation of their shared desire, his hand now moving with more confidence, more purpose. His fingers found the hem of her sweater, slowly, deliberately beginning to lift it. The fabric of her sweater, soft cashmere against her skin, yielded to his seeking fingers. He lifted it slowly, each inch a deliberate unveiling, a silent question and answer exchanged between them. The cool air of the room, a gentle caress, met her bared midriff first, sending a delicious shiver through her. Her breath hitched, a small, involuntary sound that was swallowed by his lips. His thumbs traced the delicate curve of her ribs, sending sparks across her skin, a prelude to the warmth of his palms that followed, pressing lightly against her bare waist. She felt the subtle tremor in his hands, a mirror of the quake in her own body, and it was intoxicating. It spoke of his desire, a powerful current held in check by a reverence that made her feel cherished, utterly safe. The sweater continued its ascent, peeling away from her skin like a second self, until it was gathered at her chest, trapping her arms. With a soft sigh against her mouth, Kael broke the kiss just long enough for her to lift her arms, allowing him to pull the garment over her head. For a moment, she stood before him in only her lace bra and jeans, her chest rising and falling with quickened breaths. His eyes, dark and intense, devoured the sight, a silent appreciation that made her blush bloom hotly across her cheeks and décolleté. Yet there was no shame, only a burgeoning confidence fueled by the adoration she saw reflected in their depths. His gaze lingered on the delicate lace, the swell of her breasts beneath, before returning to meet hers, a silent question. Her hands, emboldened by his tender patience, reached up to cup his face, her thumbs stroking the sharp line of his jaw. "Your turn," she whispered, her voice husky with desire, a challenge and an invitation. A slow, utterly captivating smile spread across his lips, a flash of white in the dim light. "As you wish, my love." He leaned down, stealing another soft kiss, before reaching for the hem of his own shirt. The dark fabric, stretched taut across his broad shoulders, rose to reveal the sculpted planes of his abdomen, the powerful curve of his chest. She watched, mesmerized, as the shirt peeled back, revealing skin that was warm and taut, dusted with fine dark hair. When it came off, he tossed it carelessly aside, and then they stood, chest to chest, separated only by the thin lace of her bra. The air between them crackled with an unspoken energy, a palpable longing. Kael's hands moved to the straps of her bra, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin of her shoulders as he expertly unclasped it. A faint click, and then the lace fell away, leaving her fully exposed to his gaze, to the cool air, and to the searing heat of his presence. She felt a fresh wave of vulnerability, a sudden shyness that warred with the overwhelming need to feel his skin against hers. Her hands almost instinctively rose to cover herself, but Kael gently took her wrists, lowering her arms, his touch a soft reassurance. His gaze, still tender, was utterly consuming, moving slowly over her breasts, the taut peaks, the curve of her stomach. She felt herself flush even deeper, but his eyes held no judgment, only a profound admiration that melted away her last vestiges of hesitation. "You are breathtaking," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against her lips as he leaned in to kiss her again. A slow, deep kiss that tasted of longing and promise. As their lips met, his hands finally made contact with her bare skin. His palms, warm and slightly calloused, settled on her waist, drawing her closer until there was no space left between them. The sensation of his bare chest against hers was electric, a jolt that went straight to her core. Her nipples, already puckered with anticipation, brushed against the hard planes of his chest, sending a thrill like lightning through her. She gasped into his mouth, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer still. The kiss deepened, becoming more fervent, more demanding. His tongue danced with hers, a delicious tango that mirrored the swirling emotions within her. She could taste him, the subtle tang of his skin, the fresh mint of his breath, and it was intoxicating, drawing her further into the exquisite storm he was unleashing within her. His hands began to move, tracing the curve of her spine, pressing her closer to the hard warmth of his body. She felt the undeniable press of his erection against her stomach, a potent reminder of the raw desire that pulsed between them. A soft moan escaped her lips, lost in the depths of their kiss. "Sweetheart," he whispered, breaking the kiss to scatter a trail of soft open-mouthed kisses along her jawline, down the elegant curve of her neck. His lips were hot, persuasive, igniting a trail of fire everywhere they touched. She arched into him, her head falling back slightly, exposing the tender skin of her throat. He took full advantage, his mouth suckling gently, sending shivers through her. Her fingers tightened in his hair, her nails gently scraping his scalp, a delicious sensation that made him groan. He lifted her slightly, her feet barely touching the ground, and she wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively, her jeans still clinging to her. The intimate contact was almost unbearable, a sweet agony that promised ultimate release. He carried her like that, effortlessly, across the short distance to the bed. The soft glow from the bedside lamp cast long dancing shadows on the walls, painting their figures in hues of gold and amber. He lowered her gently onto the edge of the mattress, his body still pressed against hers, his weight a comforting, desired pressure. "Your jeans?" he murmured, his voice thick with desire, his eyes locked on hers. She nodded, breathless. Her hands, still trembling slightly, went to the button of her jeans, but his fingers were there first, covering hers. "Allow me," he whispered, his eyes sparkling with a mischievous glint. He knelt before her, his gaze unwavering, and slowly, deliberately, undid the button. The zip followed, a soft rasp in the quiet room. Her breath caught in her throat as he began to ease the denim down her hips, his knuckles brushing against her skin, sending waves of heat through her. He worked them down her thighs, over her knees, until they pooled around her ankles. She lifted her feet and he gently pulled them free, tossing them onto the floor to join her sweater and bra. Now, she lay before him in only her small lace panties, her body humming with a desperate need. He rose, his gaze still fixed on her, and then, with a slow, sensual movement, he unzipped his own trousers. The sound was loud in the quiet room, a punctuation mark to the escalating tension. She watched, captivated, as he pushed them down, revealing the taut, muscular lines of his thighs, and then the dark fabric of his boxer briefs. He kicked off his trousers, then his briefs, his erection springing free, magnificent and undeniably eager. He stood before her, fully nude, a vision of raw masculine beauty. The lamplight gilded his powerful frame, highlighting the definition of his muscles, the strong lines of his shoulders, the flat planes of his stomach, the alluring curve of his hips. Her gaze traveled over him, lingering on the undeniable proof of his desire, a powerful surge of heat blossoming low in her belly. He moved to the bed, his knees sinking into the soft mattress as he crawled towards her. She lay back, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, her hands instinctively reaching out for him. He met her halfway, his body covering hers, their skin meeting once more in a delicious explosion of sensation. His lips found hers again, softer this time, a tender exploration that promised deeper delights. He kissed her eyelids, her temples, the soft curve behind her ear, sending shivers cascading down her spine. His hands were a symphony of touch, stroking her hair, tracing the line of her collarbone, moving down her arms to entwine their fingers. "Beautiful," he breathed against her neck, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. "So incredibly beautiful," she moaned, a soft, helpless sound. "Kael," she whispered, her fingers digging gently into the taut muscles of his shoulders. "I want you." "And I, you, my love," he responded, his lips brushing against hers. "More than words can say." He shifted, raising himself slightly on his elbows, his gaze searching hers. There was a profound tenderness in his eyes, an almost reverent quality that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in a very long time. It wasn't just physical desire, though that was undeniable, but a deeper connection, an emotional intimacy that made her heart ache with a sweet longing. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low and serious, even amidst the passion. "There's no turning back from here, my darling, only forward." She met his gaze, her own eyes shining with unshed tears of profound emotion. "Yes," she affirmed, her voice clear and steady, despite the tremor in her body. "More than anything, yes." A breathtaking smile illuminated his face, a radiant expression of pure joy and relief. He lowered his head, not to kiss her lips, but to rest his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling, their heartbeats echoing in the quiet room. "Then let's go forward," he whispered, his voice laced with a raw emotion that thrilled her to her core. He kissed her then, a slow, deliberate kiss that promised eternity. His hands, no longer tentative, began to explore the curves of her body with a newfound confidence. One hand moved to cup her breast, his thumb circling the taut peak, sending a jolt of pleasure through her. She arched into his touch, her breath catching in her throat. The other hand began a slow, sensual journey down her side, over her hip, to the soft curve of her outer thigh. She was acutely aware of the thin barrier of lace that remained between them, a delicious torment. His fingers brushed against the delicate fabric, sending a wave of heat through her. He moved his leg, his thigh pressing against hers, the rough texture of his skin a delightful contrast to the softness of her own. His kisses deepened, growing more insistent, more demanding. He trailed his lips down her throat again, lingering at the hollow of her collarbone, before moving lower, toward the swell of her breast. She gasped as his mouth closed over one peak, a gentle suckling that sent exquisite shivers through every nerve ending in her body. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, desperate for more. He moved from one breast to the other, lavishing attention on each, his tongue tracing patterns, his lips tugging gently, drawing forth soft moans that she couldn't suppress. Her body was a symphony of sensation, every nerve alive, humming with a delicious tension that begged for release. His hand, which had been caressing her thigh, now moved slowly, purposefully, towards the lace barrier. Her breath hitched. Fingers brushed against the soft fabric, teasing, tantalizing before finally slipping beneath the lace. The immediate contact of his warm fingers against her bare skin sent a shockwave through her. She gasped, her hips arching instinctively towards his touch. His fingers were gentle, yet firm, exploring the delicate folds of her femininity, sending delicious tremors through her core. He found the sensitive bud, circling it with a feather-light touch, and she cried out, a soft, helpless sound of pure pleasure. "So sweet," he murmured against her breast, his voice husky, his breath warm against her skin. "So incredibly responsive." He continued his exquisite torture, his thumb moving with a rhythmic precision that brought her closer and closer to the edge. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, a delicious tremor that radiated from her core outwards. Her hips lifted, pressing against his hand, silently begging for more. The world narrowed to the sensations he was creating, the feel of his skin against hers, the scent of him, the intoxicating taste of him on her lips. He shifted slightly, his body moving in a slow, sensual rhythm against hers, the hard press of his erection, a constant, tantalizing reminder of the intimacy that awaited them. His fingers deepened their exploration, delving inside her, finding the moist heat that pulsed with a desperate longing. She was slick, ready, aching for him. Her legs parted further, instinctively wrapping around his hips, drawing him impossibly closer. She felt the tip of him brush against her entrance, a hot, insistent pressure that made her whimper. The anticipation was exquisite, almost unbearable. She wanted him, needed him, more than she had ever wanted anything in her life. "Kael," she breathed, her voice ragged, on the verge of breaking. "Please." He lifted his head, his dark eyes ablaze with passion, yet still holding that tender, adoring quality. "Soon, my love," he whispered, his lips hovering just inches from hers. "We have all night." He leaned down, taking her lips in another deep, soul-stirring kiss, his tongue mirroring the movements of his fingers. The combined sensations were overwhelming, pushing her higher and higher. Her body arched, her back lifting from the mattress as a wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over her. She was on the precipice, poised on the edge of a delicious chasm, desperate to fall. He watched her, his expression a mixture of profound satisfaction and intense desire, as he continued his slow, deliberate ministrations. His thumb found the sensitive spot again, pressing gently, firmly, and she cried out, her body convulsing with a pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. Her muscles tightened, her breath hitched, and she felt the first delicious ripples of an impending climax. He held her there, suspended in that exquisite tension, bringing her almost to the brink, then easing back just slightly, prolonging the delicious agony. It was a masterful dance, a testament to his understanding of her body, her desires. She was putty in his hands, utterly surrendered to the sensations he evoked. "Look at me," he commanded softly, his voice a low growl that sent shivers through her. She opened her eyes, hazy with desire, and met his gaze. His eyes were dark pools of passion, reflecting her own longing, her own surrender. In them, she saw a promise, a future, an intensity that thrilled her to her very core. "You are mine," he whispered, his voice possessive, yet filled with a tenderness that made her heart swell. "And I am yours." He lowered his head, pressing his lips to hers once more, a deep, consuming kiss that sealed their unspoken vows. His fingers continued their work, pushing her higher and higher, closer and closer to the edge. The air was thick with their mingled scents, their ragged breaths, the soft sighs and moans that escaped their lips. Her body was a bow drawn taut, ready to release its arrow. Every muscle was screaming for release, every nerve ending a light. She felt the exquisite pressure building, a delicious torrent just waiting to break free. He shifted once more, his body pressing firmly against hers, the hot, hard length of him aligned perfectly. The sweet ache of being filled, of being completed, was almost unbearable in its intensity. She wrapped her legs even tighter around him, pulling him in, desperate for the final connection, the ultimate surrender. His lips moved from her mouth to her ear, his hot breath stirring the small hairs there. "Ready, my love," he whispered, his voice a promise of utter bliss. She could only nod, a small, choked sound escaping her throat. Her body was trembling, quivering with anticipation, her core throbbing with a desperate, all-consuming need. She was ready. More than ready. She was utterly, completely, irrevocably his. He paused, his gaze locked with hers, a silent question, a shared understanding passing between them. The world outside the soft glow of the lamp had ceased to exist. There was only them, entwined, breathless, on the precipice of something profound and utterly transformative. His hands braced on either side of her head, his eyes burning into hers, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he began to lower himself. Slowly, deliberately, a breath held captive in the space between them. The first whisper of contact was an electric shiver that arced through her. A gasp caught in her throat. His eyes, dark and intense, never left hers as he pressed closer, a silent offering, a profound asking. She arched into him, a soft cry escaping her lips, meeting his unspoken plea with an eager, trembling welcome. The warmth spread, an exquisite pressure, a fullness that began to displace every other thought, every other sensation. He moved with agonizing slowness, each millimeter a lifetime, each degree of ingress a new galaxy unfurling within her. Her fingers dug into the hard muscle of his back, urging him deeper, silently pleading for the complete invasion, the blissful oblivion. A low groan rumbled in his chest, vibrating against her, as he finally, fully, found his home. A long, shuddering breath escaped him, and he sank into her completely, burying himself in her warmth, her softness, her everything. He paused, suspended above her, their bodies melded, perfectly aligned. Her legs instinctively wrapped around his waist, drawing him even closer, binding him to her with a fierce, possessive love. He leaned down, pressing his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling, ragged and sweet. "Mine," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, a possessive growl that thrilled her to her core. "Always yours," she breathed back, the words a silent promise, a sacred vow. The air shimmered with the intensity of their connection, a palpable force that enveloped them. Then, with an almost imperceptible shift, he began to move. A slow, deep thrust that made her arch her back, a moan tearing from her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. He withdrew slightly, a teasing, tantalizing pull that left her breathless and aching for his return, before plunging back in, deeper, more assured. A rhythm began to build, ancient and primal, yet utterly new and uniquely theirs. Each thrust was a declaration, each withdrawal a whisper of longing. The bed creaked softly beneath them, a symphony to their unfolding passion, a gentle percussion accompanying the rising crescendo of their shared desire. Her hands explored the taut planes of his back, tracing the powerful muscles, the subtle ridges of his spine. She felt the heat radiating from him, the dampness of his skin against hers, the rapid beat of his heart thrumming against her breast. Her own heart hammered a frantic rhythm, echoing the wildness that was blossoming inside her. Her vision blurred, not from tears but from the sheer overwhelming intensity of sensation. She saw only him, felt only him, knew only him. The world had shrunk to the space they occupied, a universe of two. He watched her face, his gaze burning, studying every nuanced expression, every flush of color that bloomed on her cheeks, every tremor that shook her. He saw the surrender in her eyes, the burgeoning ecstasy, and it fueled his own desire, making him bolder, more insistent. His hips drove into hers with a controlled power, a magnificent force that rocked her to her core. She met him thrust for thrust, her body instinctively learning his cadence, mirroring his hunger. Her nails, forgotten, left faint trails on his skin, a testament to the blissful agony she was experiencing, a delicious friction that only served to heighten the burgeoning pleasure. The world outside their embrace dissolved into a hazy, distant memory. The only reality was the space between their bodies, the friction, the exquisite pressure building. The air grew thick with their mingled scents, the clean musk of his skin, the sweet, intoxicating fragrance of her own arousal. Their heavy breathing filled the room, punctuated by soft, guttural sounds of pure pleasure, whispers of encouragement, gasps of delight. He leaned down and kissed her, a deep, consuming kiss that stole her breath and ignited a new fire within her. Their tongues danced, mimicking the dance of their hips, a frantic, urgent ballet of desire, a seamless flow of passion from mouth to core. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, desperate for more, always more. She felt the tremor start deep within her, a delicious vibration that spread outward, seizing her limbs, making her arch into him with renewed fervor. He responded instantly, his tempo quickening, his thrusts becoming more urgent, more profound, a relentless rhythm that promised absolute release. He was a force of nature, a storm of sensation, and she was willingly caught in its glorious, exhilarating vortex, spiraling ever higher into the heart of the tempest. Her hips lifted to meet his, a primal instinct guiding her movements, urging him on, begging him closer. Every nerve ending in her body seemed to hum, vibrating with an exquisite tension that bordered on pain, yet was undeniably pleasure. The soft glow of the lamp cast their forms in a warm, amber light, painting shadows that danced with their movements, a silent, intimate audience to their unfolding story. His eyes, still locked with hers, reflected the wildness in her own, a shared journey to the precipice of ecstasy. A moan tore from her throat, raw and uninhibited, as the rhythm intensified, a relentless pounding that resonated deep within her bones. She felt herself fragmenting, dissolving into pure sensation, her mind emptying of everything but the feel of him, the taste of him, the sound of him. He plunged deeper, each thrust a surrender, a claiming, a complete possession of her body and soul. Her hands clamped onto his shoulders, her fingers digging in, holding on for dear life as the current pulled her under. And then she cried out, a sound that was half a sob, half a laugh, as the first wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over her. It was a release, a shattering, a profound sense of coming home. Her muscles tightened around him, milking him, pulling him deeper into her very essence, a series of exquisite contractions that promised to unravel her completely. He groaned, a raw, primal sound, as her body convulsed around him, taking him over the edge with her. He buried his face in her neck, his body shuddering, releasing into her completely, utterly. They lay entwined, breathless, the aftershocks rippling through them both like warm ocean currents. The air was heavy with their mingled scents, their ragged breaths slowly evening out, a shared symphony of satiated desire. His weight was a comforting blanket, a warm, heavy presence that grounded her, making her feel utterly safe, utterly loved, utterly cherished. He kissed her forehead, then her temple, then the corner of her eye, tiny, tender kisses that spoke volumes of his devotion. A silent language of adoration. Beautiful, he murmured against her skin, his voice still hoarse, filled with awe. You are so beautiful. She simply held him tighter, burying her face in the curve of his neck, inhaling his scent, committing every detail of this moment to memory. The soft glow of the lamp still bathed them, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, now still and serene. The world outside remained silent, suspended, waiting for them. But they were in no hurry to return. Not yet. This cocoon of intimacy, this sacred space they had created, was all that mattered. His hand stroked her hair, then moved to trace the curve of her spine, a possessive, comforting touch that sent shivers of contentment through her. He shifted slightly, propping himself up on an elbow, looking down at her, his eyes still dark with passion, but now softened with a profound tenderness. A faint smile played on his lips, a look of utter peace and profound satisfaction. I've waited for you, he whispered, the words barely audible, yet resonating deep within her. All my life, I think? Her heart swelled, a silent echo of his sentiment. She reached up, cupping his jaw, her thumbs stroking the rough stubble that now felt as familiar as her own skin. And I for you, she replied, her voice thick with emotion, brimming with a love so vast it threatened to overwhelm her. The connection between them was palpable, a vibrant current that flowed and pulsed, binding them inextricably, soul to soul. He leaned down again, kissing her slowly, deeply, a lingering kiss that was more about connection than raw passion. It was a promise, a reassurance, a silent I love you whispered directly to her soul. When he pulled back, their foreheads rested together once more, their eyes locked. She saw the depth of his feelings, the vulnerability he allowed her to see, and her own heart opened wider, embracing him completely, unequivocally. The air in the room seemed to hum with the lingering energy of their lovemaking. Their skin was flushed, damp with exertion, their limbs still tangled in a beautiful disarray. He shifted, pulling the sheet up to cover them both, a tender gesture that made her feel even more cherished, protected. He settled back down, spooning her against him, her back pressed against his chest, his arm wrapped securely around her waist. His hand rested lightly on her stomach, his fingers idly tracing patterns on her skin, a feather-light touch that sent goosebumps across her belly. She felt the steady thrum of his heartbeat against her back, a slow, strong rhythm that soothed her, anchored her. The warmth of his breath on her neck was a comforting caress, a soft current that promised continued intimacy. She closed her eyes, letting the delicious sensations wash over her, the lingering echoes of pleasure, the profound peace of being utterly loved and utterly loving. Every cell in her body felt alive, vibrant, singing with a joy she hadn't known possible. But the night was still young, and the unspoken desire, though momentarily sated, still simmered beneath the surface, waiting for its next invitation. The connection forged in the heat of their passion was not just a fleeting moment. It was a foundation, a promise of many more nights, many more discoveries. She felt him stir behind her, a gentle nuzzle against her hair, a soft kiss pressed into her scalp. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she drifted in the liminal space between profound satisfaction and burgeoning anticipation. The journey had just begun. He tightened his hold, pulling her impossibly closer, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was exactly where she was meant to be, forever intertwined with him, under the soft, watchful glow of their lamp. He tightened his hold, pulling her impossibly closer, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was exactly where she was meant to be, forever intertwined with him, under the soft, watchful glow of their lamp. The quiet hum of the night outside seemed to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of their breathing, the soft thrum of blood in her ears. She felt the gentle pressure of his lips again, tracing the delicate curve of her ear, sending a shiver of exquisite delight down her spine. His hand, warm and strong, moved from her waist, sliding upwards along her ribs, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin beneath her breast. A soft gasp escaped her, a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She shifted ever so slightly, turning in his embrace until she was facing him, their bodies now aligned, knees tangled, chests brushing. His eyes, dark pools reflecting the lamp's golden light, held hers with an intensity that promised depths yet to be explored. A slow, tender smile played on his lips, mirroring the one that bloomed on her own. There was no need for words, only the language of touch, of gaze, of shared breath. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw, the delicate curve of her cheek, before tangling in the soft strands of hair that fanned across the pillow. His touch was feather-light, yet it held the weight of all the unspoken desires that had simmered between them through the day. Her own hand rose, instinctively seeking his warmth, her palm flattening against his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her fingertips. It was a rhythm that resonated deep within her, a melody of belonging. He leaned in, his breath warm against her lips, carrying the faint scent of their shared evening. A hint of vanilla from the dessert, a whisper his familiar, comforting cologne. Their lips met, not in a desperate rush, but in a slow, deliberate exploration. It began as a whisper, a soft press, a tender yielding, then deepened, slowly, exquisitely. His mouth moved over hers, with a practiced artistry, tasting, teasing, inviting. She responded with equal fervor, her lips parting, inviting him further into the burgeoning heat. A soft moan rumbled in his chest, a sound that vibrated through her, igniting a deeper fire. His hand slid from her hair, down her neck, over her shoulder, and then with a slow, deliberate grace, began to unfasten the delicate buttons of her nightgown. Each button released felt like a sigh, a shedding of the day's last vestiges, an unveiling of the woman beneath. The cool air brushed against her skin as it was exposed, only to be immediately warmed by his touch, his lips following the path of his fingers. He kissed the hollow of her throat, the sensitive skin just below her collarbone, leaving a trail of fire in his wake. Her head tilted back, offering him more, her fingers clutching at his shoulders, her nails gently raking through the soft fabric of his pajama top. His own shirt, still on him, felt like a barrier, a sweet torture, and with a shared understanding, she tugged at the hem, urging him to shed it. He pulled back for a moment, his eyes gleaming with desire, and with a swift movement, he shucked off his top, revealing the sculpted expanse of his chest, broad shoulders, and taut muscles. The sight of him, illuminated by the lamp's soft glow, sent a fresh wave of longing through her. She reached out, her hands splaying across his warm skin, feeling the subtle definition of his abs, the crisp hair on his chest. Her fingers traced the lines of his body, a silent language of admiration and desire. He leaned in again, their bare chests now pressing together, skin against skin, the heat building, becoming palpable. His kisses grew bolder, more insistent, moving from her lips, down her neck, tracing a path along her collarbone, lingering at the swell of her breast. He divested her of the nightgown with a gentle tug, letting it fall away, pooling around her waist. She helped him, her movements fluid and eager, and then, gloriously, she was bare to him, vulnerable and open, yet feeling utterly safe and desired. His gaze swept over her, a look of profound appreciation that made her pulse quicken. He paused, his eyes lingering, a silent testament to the beauty he saw. Then, his hand cupped her breast, his thumb circling the taut peak, sending a jolt of pleasure through her. A soft whimper escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated longing. He responded instantly, his lips descending, softly suckling, drawing a deep, guttural moan from her. The world outside the soft circle of their lamp disappeared entirely. There was only the warmth of his mouth, the gentle pull, the exquisite sensation that radiated through her core. Her hands tangled in his hair, holding him closer, silently urging him on. He moved between her breasts, leaving a trail of soft, open-mouthed kisses, before finding the other peak, bestowing upon it the same tender, yet deeply sensual attention. Her hips began to stir, a primal, unconscious movement, seeking the friction, the press, the promise of more. He seemed to understand, his body shifting, his knee gently nudging between her thighs, a soft pressure that sent a fresh tremor through her. He continued his delicious ministrations, his hand now moving lower, tracing the curve of her hip, the delicate skin of her inner thigh. His touch was light, exploratory, yet imbued with an electric charge that made her breath hitch. She felt herself opening to him, not just physically, but entirely, emotionally. Every touch was a reaffirmation of their bond, every kiss a deepening of their love. He was her anchor, her safe harbor and her wild, untamed sea. She trusted him implicitly, surrendering to the rising tide of sensation he was so expertly orchestrating. His fingers found the soft, yielding skin at the apex of her thighs, a whisper of a touch that made her arch into him. Her body was humming now, a low, sweet vibration that promised release. He moved with a languid grace, his hand exploring, coaxing, igniting every nerve ending. The heat within her intensified, a molten core that pulsed with a desperate need. She was breathless, her mind clouded with pure sensation, her body a symphony of yearning. "Please," she whispered, the word barely audible, a plea torn from the depths of her soul. He pulled back, his eyes dark with desire, yet tender, understanding. "My love," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You are exquisite." His gaze dropped, lingering on her, before he gently, slowly, pushed her nightgown down past her hips, allowing it to pool at her feet. She lay before him, completely revealed, her body trembling with anticipation. He knelt beside the bed, his eyes never leaving hers, and with a reverence that touched her soul, he shed his own remaining garments. The sight of him, fully aroused, strong and beautiful in the soft light, took her breath away. Her own desire surged, hot and undeniable. He returned to her, his body pressing against hers, the friction of skin against skin a delightful torment. She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, needing to feel every inch of him against her. His hand found its way back to her, no longer tentative, but firm and knowing. He delved into the heart of her desire, his fingers tracing, probing, awakening every sensitive point. she gasped, a low, keening sound of pure pleasure. The pressure built, exquisite and relentless, pushing her closer and closer to the edge. Her body bucked beneath his touch, her hips rising, seeking the delicious friction. "Look at me," he whispered, his voice a low rumble against her ear, as his fingers continued their work, bringing her to the brink. She opened her eyes, hazy with passion, and met his gaze. His eyes were burning, reflecting the fire he had ignited within her, yet they held a profound tenderness, a deep, abiding love that transcended the physical. He kissed her then, a deep, soul-stirring kiss that swallowed her gasps, her moans, her whispered cries. It was a kiss that tasted of longing, of surrender, of shared ecstasy. And then, slowly, deliberately, he shifted, positioning himself above her, his eyes still locked with hers. A silent question, a shared promise. She opened herself to him, her body arching, inviting him home. With a soft groan that was part reverence, part raw desire, he entered her. A gasp tore from her throat, a sensation both familiar and utterly new. A profound sense of completeness. He moved slowly at first, allowing her body to adjust, to embrace him fully. She wrapped her legs around his waist, drawing him deeper, wanting to absorb every inch of him. Their eyes remained locked, a silent conversation unfolding between them, a dialogue of love, trust, and unleashed passion. The rhythm began, a slow, sensual sway that soon intensified, building in momentum, in power. Each thrust was a deeper plunge into bliss, each withdrawal a sweet agony of anticipation. Her hips rose to meet his, their bodies moving in a primal dance, a perfect synchronicity forged by years of shared intimacy, yet always fresh, always new. Her breathing grew ragged, punctuated by soft cries and gasps. His own breaths came in short, sharp bursts, his muscles taut, his face a mask of intense pleasure. He leaned down, his lips finding hers again, swallowing her sounds, his tongue dancing with hers in a heated embrace. The world narrowed to the space between them, to the exquisite friction, the pounding of their hearts, the rush of blood through their veins. She felt the tension coil tighter and tighter within her, a beautiful, unbearable pressure that demanded release. He seemed to sense it, his pace quickening, his movements becoming more urgent, more insistent. "Yes," she whimpered. "Oh yes." He drove into her, deeper, harder, faster, his body a powerful force, yet always connected, always mindful of her pleasure. She felt the wave building, a tsunami of sensation rising within her, threatening to overwhelm her. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, her nails leaving faint marks, her head thrashing on the pillow. And then, with one final profound thrust, the wave broke. A cry tore from her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated ecstasy as her body convulsed around him, a cascade of pleasure washing over her, through her, shattering her into a million glorious pieces. He groaned, a deep, primal sound, and followed her over the edge, his body tensing, shuddering, pouring his essence into her. They clung to each other, breathless, spent, their bodies slick with sweat, their hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against each other. The tremors slowly subsided, leaving in their wake a profound sense of peace, a deep, soul-satisfying contentment. He collapsed onto her, his weight a comforting presence, his head resting in the crook of her neck. She stroked his hair, her fingers gently tracing the nape of his neck, feeling the last vestiges of his passion thrumming beneath her touch. He kissed her shoulder, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke volumes without a single word. They lay entwined for a long time, the only sounds their gradually slowing breaths, the gentle creaks of the old house, and the persistent, soft glow of their lamp. Eventually he stirred, lifting himself slightly, but only enough to shift his weight to his forearms, allowing him to look down at her. His eyes, still dark with the afterglow of their passion, held hers, full of tenderness and a love so profound it stole her breath. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping away, a stray tear from the corner of her eye. A tear she hadn't even realized she'd shed, a testament to the emotional depth of their shared experience. "Are you all right, my love?" he whispered, his voice hoarse, but laced with concern. She smiled, a soft, radiant smile that conveyed her utter contentment. "More than all right," she murmured, her voice equally soft, perfect. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, then her nose, and finally, a tender, lingering kiss to her lips. It was a kiss of reassurance, of gratitude, of enduring love. He then shifted, moving to lie beside her, pulling her close against his side, her head resting on his shoulder. Her arm draped over his waist, her hand finding his, their fingers lacing together. The warmth of their bodies, the lingering scent of their lovemaking, the soft glow of the lamp, it all combined to create a sanctuary, a haven where only they existed. She felt utterly safe, cherished, and deeply loved. The journey, which had begun with anticipation, had culminated in a beautiful, explosive union, and now settled into a profound peace. This was the magic of their intimacy, the way it transcended the physical, weaving their souls together with each shared breath, each tender touch. He pressed a final kiss into her hair, a sigh escaping his lips that was pure contentment. She heard him murmur something, a soft, indistinct word that sounded like always. Her heart swelled, a silent echo of his sentiment. The liminal space she had inhabited earlier, between satisfaction and anticipation, had now shifted. It was a space of utter, complete satisfaction, tinged with the quiet promise of endless tomorrows, endless nights just like this one. She closed her eyes, feeling the gentle rise and fall of his chest beneath her ear, the steady beat of his heart. The lamp continued its soft, watchful glow, a silent guardian of their love, a beacon in the quiet darkness. She drifted, not into sleep yet, but into a state of blissful, peaceful awareness, forever intertwined with him, exactly where she was meant to be. The night was still young, but their world was complete.